Happy Monday. Good morning. Wake up, get that cup of coffee if you need it. And welcome to the Colhane Leadership Council. And as you guys know, I think our guest needs no introduction, but we are joined with our founder, Glenn Sanford, this morning. Glenn, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Ramon. Good morning, everyone. It is a good morning. I'm enjoying your Arizona weather. Just been hanging out here for the last few weeks, so.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about that the other day. It's a lot of exciting stuff going on in Scottsdale, that's for sure.
Yeah, so good stuff. I'm glad to be here, and just happy to contribute and support where I can. So.
Well, thanks. We appreciate you jumping on. So, Glenn, I know we were just in Mexico last week, which was a ton of fun. And one of the things that I always love, that especially some of the growth leaders that are there, is we always talk about it'll never be smaller than this, right?
It'll never be this small again. Yeah,
it'll never be this small again, which is, I think that's just the theme of EXP in general, right? It's just, it'll never be this small again. So one of the other things that stood out to me is I love the story. We don't have to make it a really long, drawn out story, but I love the story, and I want our agents to hear, especially as we're looking at, going forward, we look at, the global economy, we look at all the different factors going on. We could be headed for unprecedented times. We don't know, right? It's kind of, the future is always the future. But if you could just shine some light on how EXP conceptually, like you thought of it and created it, and what the environment was like at that time that EXP was born.
Yeah, so 2009 we started the EXP. Of course, Brian and I had been working together since 2005. So we had been we'd run some teams together. I was running about 6 teams. He was running really the Arizona team back in 2005 through the launch of EXP Realty. I'd started as an agent in 2002. So I was an agent on a team. Then I started a team in 2004, and then glutton for punishment, started multiple teams. And in 2008, when it hit, I was an independent brokerage with 4 offices, and we had to close down 3 of the 4 offices. We actually took our team in Arizona and moved them over to a company called HomeSmart. In I think Portland, we moved them back to Keller Williams. But we kind of juggled people around while we were trying to figure out how to pivot in 2009. And the single biggest cost to run a real estate brokerage is the physical office, the bricks and mortar infrastructure, followed closely by the redundant staffing costs. And so when we looked at where we were, it was a pretty interesting time. If you think about in 2009 versus 2002, 2002, for those who were agents back then or what have you, we were on dial-up internet. It was the whole, that sound, you heard the tone coming from the modem that connected to your phone line, that then if you were lucky, you had a 56K baud modem, and that was considered fast. But by 2009, cable internet was pretty much in every major city, and certainly most homes in America. And so we'd got to a point where high-speed internet was pretty much everywhere. Also, our phones had 3G on it, which now we're on 5G, but 3G was still actually pretty fast. It was pretty decent speed. And so you could start to do things like tether your computer to your phone. And so it gave you a lot of mobility as an agent. Whereas in 2002, 2003, 2004, you really needed to go to an office because that's where the high-speed internet was. If you wanted to upload photos to the MLS, if you wanted to do searches, if you wanted to do a bunch of stuff, there was reasons why, just from a technology standpoint, you wanted to be in an office. But by 2009, we didn't have to have that. So we of course had the downturn in the economy, late 2008. For those of you who weren't in the real estate market, the whole real estate industry had come to a screeching halt in October In fact, we went from closing about 7 million a month in closed volume to 700,000 in that we closed in October of 2008. And so that's 90% reduction. Now started to loosen up a little bit by November, December, January, February, but nowhere near what the volumes were in the first half of 2008. And so the market just I use the technical term that it sucked. But with that, we actually had a team leader mastermind in February of 2009. So really not that long. October was the month everything froze up. November, December, January, February. So 4 months into basically the housing, this depression, we all got together to talk about what we were going to do to continue to be relevant in the residential real estate industry. My big thing was I wanted to make sure that I wasn't a real estate brokerage that was just trying to borrow money to sort of keep the doors open. I wanted to actually build a profitable real estate brokerage that would actually be profitable in a bad market. And so we really spent from February of 2009 through about June, July, figuring out what the model might be. And then we were trying to solve some of the problems with that model. If you didn't have physical offices, how do you build collaboration in communities? So that was one of the things that we really focused on July, August, September. And that's, we were the first company to use a metaverse for actually the enterprise back in 2009. But we really wanted to build something that was sustainable in good times and bad times. And so what we did is we laid out all of the models that were out there. We had been at Keller Williams. Obviously, we had run an independent brokerage, but we saw that Keller Williams has been the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the history of real estate up until that point. And so we really looked at, why did they grow so quickly? And in my mind, the single biggest reason why they grew was because of their profit share model. Their 7-level profit share program, and you could take all the other stuff, the education, the training, all of that, which was great stuff, but that on its own, without the profit share, wouldn't have really meant it would just been another brokerage. But the profit share, in my mind, made all the difference. So we said, okay. In 2007, when I went independent, I recruited 184 people to Keller at that point in time, and for that effort from 2006, I got a profit share check for the whole year combined of $6,000. So I was like, man, this doesn't work. This doesn't pencil. And so I said to the team at the time, if we ever do a company, we're going to do revenue share, not profit share. Now, we hadn't thought about the non-bricks and mortar based piece, but we did think about the idea that, that if you could create predictable, relatively predictable revenue when you brought somebody in, it would add a lot more faith to the work that was being done to grow the real estate brokerage at the agent level. And so that really was very formative for us. And so 2009, we worked out what would the revenue share model look like? How do we compare to a profitable Keller Williams office? And so that is pretty much encompassed with the first level exponential share and the next 6 levels of expansion share. So some people don't even really know that we have 2 shares in our rev share program. We have an expansion share and an exponential share. The expansion share is pretty cool because what it does is it allows somebody who isn't a big recruiter to find somebody who maybe is really good at agent attraction and building a large organization, and they can actually generate residuals through all 7 levels, and that can be quite sizable over time. You look at some people who have large groups that maybe only have 10 or 15 people wide, but they're getting paid large amounts of money on levels 6 and level 7, especially because we have that the way that it pays out down there. So the expansion share is kind of a cool piece. And then for those who are really geared toward agent attraction, we really made it lucrative by sort of opening up the levels as people went wider and built larger organizations. And so we really kind of created this, I don't want to say perfect revenue share system, because we've had to make little tweaks here and there, but certainly the best revenue sharing model that's in existence today. And I mean that, you know, in all, you know, there's really no other model like it. You can look at even Real, who's kind of copied our model. You know, do this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it takes 10 people just to open up your second level, which is kind of you know, difficult to get to 10 anyway. Most people don't really get to 10, so they really kind of eliminated that, and then it trims down. Whereas ours kind of goes, it does this, it kind of bulks up and then it drops down and then it bulks up again, and so that really kind of creates a lot of opportunities to build, you know, larger income as your organization matures and grows. So it's a much more sustainable long-term model. So those are kind of some of the formative thoughts. You know, the other piece was I always wanted to be a shareholder in the companies I was part of, Keller Williams and Prudential, which is where I started, which is now Berkshire Hathaway. I wasn't offered any meaningful equity. I was offered 1% of Keller Williams, of the local market center, even though I represented 30% of the office production, me and my team. So when we started EXP, we wanted to be able to figure out a way to share equity with our agents and brokers at whatever level they want to participate. So we actually became a public company in 2013 for the single purpose of being able to share equity with our agents and brokers. So that really kind of put us on another path to create additional growth by sort of using the equity model as a way to grow. So those are some of the thoughts that were going through our minds, and why we did it the way we did it. And obviously it seems to be working.
Well, that's what I love about the story, Glenn. It gives me so much confidence in the business model and in the thought process that went behind building out EXP, is that it was built to withstand you know, uncertain times in the real estate market where the traditional business model would fail. So you know, something else that I thought of, and this is just more of a personal thing, I guess, but I could only imagine in 2009, when you're talking about a virtual cloud-based brokerage, right? You know, when other people are hearing that, I have to imagine people thought you were crazy. This is never going to work. You know, no one's laughing now, obviously, right? It's fastest growing company, real estate brokerage in the world. And so I'd have to ask you if this is what you saw, you know, looking out 2009 now to 2022, that was a 12-year, 13-year vision, right? How do you see, you know, what do you think the future is of real estate now going forward? Like, I'm assuming you're already looking 15, 20 years down the line. So I'd just like to get a little bit of your take on where you see, you know, the agent and where you see real estate brokerage going in the future.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, we pioneered a couple things. We pioneered the cloud-based brokerage, really the revenue sharing model and equity model. And so, you know, I think it's now become pretty much a standard that if you're gonna build a real estate brokerage, you're gonna have to make agents part of the equation. It's no longer just a broker owner sitting up on top and then hire a bunch of agents and then you know, and by the way, that's not a great model for broker owners either. They typically haven't done very well in the past because, you know, agents haven't had a reason to stay at any given brokerage. They've literally migrated from one brokerage to the next brokerage based on, you know, new location, private office, better split, you know, maybe they get some special deal. So broker owners have had a hard time with that model, but by changing the model and actually making agents true partners in the brokerage, it changes the game. And I think that's probably the thing that we really nailed, which I think any brokerage coming after us will have to do. You see a lot of companies making the pivots to something similar. You know, Fathom, you know, they now offer equity. HomeSmart now has a EXP-like program to go with their model. So they've got their 100% plus their rev share model, and they're getting ready to go public. you got Keller Williams supposedly getting ready to go public, and I'm not sure what they're going to use for that, if they're going to figure out ways to get equity to their agents. But I think we really kind of, what we did is we disrupted, and now companies that want to stay relevant have to match or try to beat the offerings that EXP already has in place. And so I think that creates a backdrop of a unique industry. I think the franchise system is fundamentally broken. So the challenge with franchises, they can't pivot. Their franchise agreements, when they write them, they typically have 5 to 10 years on the franchise agreements, which are the rights the franchisee has on the franchisor, so the demands that the franchisee can make, but also it's the demands the franchisor can make against the franchisee. So I think there's a few different pieces that all sort of connect together relative to franchisees, franchisors, and how that sort of hurts companies from changing. So I think this national brokerage concept, Compass is doing it through acquisitions. They're creating a national brokerage platform, and of course us. Redfin built a national platform. So there's really only a few companies that have done through this national platform. But what's the ingredient set that needs to be there for the long run? And then once that's in place, what are all the things that come out of that? So we're 77,000 agents now, and you think about that being its own, it's its own city. I mean, there's a lot of cities that aren't 77,000 people, and yet they've got Walmarts and malls and restaurants and all this other stuff that takes place in these ecosystems. Well, what does 77,000 agents mean, and what's the ecosystem start to look like? We look at, we've got lenders and home warranty and title and escrow and a bunch of just normal real estate services, but you could think about health and wellness. You could think about all kinds of other things that can sort of grow inside of that ecosystem to help we'll call it the citizens of EXP.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think if you look around, like you said, if you look around at the brokerage landscape, there's no doubt that EXP set the standard, set the bar on essentially on agent compensation, and I think an agent opportunity. Now, I don't think anyone has as large of an opportunity as we do at EXP, but they're definitely trying.
Right. Yeah, and you'd expect that. I mean, if we've got a good model, if people aren't copying us, then they're either the whole industry is ignorant, or I'm not sure what the other or is. But
you got to pay attention to what's working. Yeah, correct.
Right.
So and let me ask you this, because I know I know agent count isn't your goal. I know that you care more about the net promoter score. You care more about the agents and their their careers and their overall fulfillment working with the company. But if we could talk numbers, because I think, looking out going forward, I'd love for you to share kind of what the trajectory is based on the numbers we've already achieved. And I just want to put this out there, coming from someone who was a brokerage owner, for everyone on this call, guys, this is only going to happen once, right? Like, as we're going through this trajectory, the EXP's skyrocketing growth, it's not like it's going to reset back to 50,000 agents or 5,000 agents. We're going to go through it again. And this is a huge opportunity. But yeah, Glenn, I'd love to get your take on, going forward, like what are we looking at numbers and growth wise in your mind?
Yeah. So, I used kind of a baseline of around 50% year over year growth. I think that's a sustainable number for a few years from now. So if we sort of think about that, means, next year will be at this time, 115,000 or more. We'll probably be more. We go a year after that, 173,000 agents. So that'd be the end of 2024. So 2025. I think that's let's see. Oh no, that's not even the end of 20. No, by the end of 2024, we'll be larger than Keller Williams. Assuming they don't grow too much between now and then, but certainly by 2025 we'll be the largest single brokerage. So this time in 2025 will be somewhere around 250,000 agents. 2026 will be close to 400,000, and 2027, which is 5 years from now, will be in excess of 500,000 agents. So that's just 50% year-over-year growth rate. In fact, the number that I've got on that, based on today's starting date, is 584,718. So so you think about the idea of being 500,000 agents in 5 years. It's not an unreasonable number. It's probably going to be a heck of a lot of work. A lot of things got to go in our favor, but at the same time, it's very doable. So that, and we can, and we'll obviously be innovations inside of that. You look at companies like Realty. Think about the idea that Realty has how many different brands, Coldwell Banker, Century 101, 21, ERA, Sotheby's, whatever. So we're even thinking about, does it all need to be under one brand? Could we have sister brands, same comp model, but other brands to kind of create a little bit of differentiation out in the marketplace?
Definitely. Well, I think the key factor is the underlining model, right? The underlining foundation is what will give us that opportunity to do that if you see fit, if the company sees fit. Glenn, on the heels of collaboration on our agents, I do want to make sure that we get we leave some time for the agents to ask some questions, do a little bit of Q&A. That'd be awesome. But hey guys, I have to tell you, make sure, when we're talking about growth and we're talking about, this type of opportunity here, just this call alone, this is not something that other agents at any other company are getting. So make sure you're sharing this on your social media. Take a screenshot with you and Glenn on there, share it, put it out there to the world, because this is, again, no other agents are getting this type of opportunity. So just make sure you share it. But this is what we're going to do. If you have a question, make sure raise your hand, and then Matt, are you gonna pull them out?
Yeah, I'll moderate.
Okay, let's do that. So if you have a question, raise your hand on the little, not physically, just raise it in the on the go to your little couple dots there and hit the raise hand, and when Matt will call on you.
See, Crystal Mucha, are you on there? See your hand raised. Do you want to open up your mic?
Yeah, good morning. So Glenn, my question is, I was reading on some forums and there was some, I guess, little rumors going around talking about the possibility of absorbing other real estate companies. No name is mentioned, but is there any talk of that, or do you see that in our future? Is that something that we do?
We don't. I mean, we do. We have brokerages that do convert over all the time. And then the growth team has some latitude on different levers they can kind of work with to help transition a broker over. A lot of times, the first 6 months or so, we may give them a break on their caps, or we'll transfer some of the money that would have went to cap to the broker owner to help with some of the transition expenses, et cetera. So that's typically only goes on for a period of time, maximum typically 6 months. But we've got kind of some things that we can do to help a broker owner. But we just had Frank Gray, convert over in Houston, 400 and something agents, and he's pretty excited to have converted his brokerage over. But we have a number of brokerages. Revelation converted in Arizona with 800 agents. So we've had a lot of brokerages converted, multiple sizes. There every once in a while there'll be some reason why we might want to acquire a brokerage for strategic reasons, but it's typically not for just the agent count. Maybe they've got a piece of technology, maybe they've got something that would be value add, but typically that's what we're acquiring. There's something strategic to it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Crystal.
Good question, by the way.
Awesome, thank you, Crystal. See, we got Jackie Plunkett. Are you here?
I am here. Good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and the team. I love the fact that, you had the foresight, to see, and it's always good to be a part of a company that is the visionary and the first to the market. I just wanted to know, what do you expect to come from some of our competitors, as they're probably going to say, okay, we need to shift. So what do you think some of the competitors may come up with, and what do we have planned, not to just to be the first to the market to do it, but to remain the leaders in the market of what we're doing?
Yeah, so the first part, I mentioned it earlier, but the when we think about competitors, they do have a really hard time pivoting. And what I mean by that is, if you look at a Remax franchise agreement, a Coldwell Banker franchise agreement, a Keller Williams franchise agreement, anybody who's been around for a while, and I mentioned them because of the three largest brands out there, none of them have been able to pivot. Keller tried to pivot, but they got I think they actually got sued by some of their regional owners for trying to change the model. And so they've been kind of stuck with the model they've had. In fact, it's ironic because I think Gary Keller had mentioned at one time he wasn't really worried about people copying the Keller Williams model because everybody's got their model and that's what they have to live with. So in some levels, we have to live with the model we've got as well, because it's our model. The difference is we're not a franchise, so we can actually pivot a little easier than our competition because we can change the model. We could I don't know what we would do, but we could potentially lower the cap. We could potentially lower the split. We could potentially change fees. We could potentially add products and services. We could do different things if they pencil. So and so that's the other part. We run very thin margins. As a company, we're running at about 2% net income across the volume of business, which is very, very tight margin. So the idea is really to make sure that the financial model makes sense, and that we're keeping the promises that we've kept with our agents and brokers relative to all the benefits they get inside the model.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Great question.
Right, who's up next? That's Suzanne Fuqua. Hey, Suzanne.
Man.
Hi there. Well, the good news is I've had a wonderful ride since conception. So I've been there with Glenn. I washed bottles and cleaned the toilets from the very beginning and stayed with it. It was so much fun. The bad news is that the EXP provided me with my retirement, just like the program says, just like Glenn did it, but I cannot retire. I will not retire. I am so addicted. It is so intellectually challenging. It is so much fun every day for me, Glenn. You didn't tell me I was going to get hooked. So
well, we did talk about it in Cabo, that we're hope dealers, which is kind of like a drug.
it is like a drug. I love it. And the longer you stay. So anyway, it's kind of funny when you tell people we have an exit strategy. I'm not going anywhere right now. Thank you. But my question is to you, Glenn, when or are we already feeling the impact of our overseas, the other countries, financially, maybe I would say, or stock wise, of all the other countries contributing in sales and all of that?
Yeah, so if we look at international, we're 10,000-12,000 agents out of the 77,000. So it's maybe 10% of the volume comes from overseas. So so it's not going to be that measurable at this point in time. But I think when international is half of the company, which international is growing dramatically faster than the U.S. So when we think about the idea that that the international is going to over double in 2022, whereas domestically we're going to grow maybe 50-60%. So you think about doubling a few years in a row internationally, pretty soon it's real volume.
Okay, thanks a bunch.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for your question, Suzanne. Great question. Let's see. We got Gary. Gary, no last name. You here, Gary?
Yeah, I am. Gary from north of Toronto. So Glenn, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for the great vision that people like yourself and Brian have created. We came over from Keller Williams just about 2 years ago. And I just really wanted to say thank you because I've been able to get rather close to Brian, get a lot of mentoring and guidance from him. And, you know, I'm in the lucky fortune of a place to manage a large team. And as I say to our team, we're not successful if you're not successful. So that's my biggest motivator, is to basically create success amongst our team. And that comes from people like you, right? I follow you and Brian and others, and love the mentoring that comes out of this company. And frankly, the profit share, it's built wealth for us over the last 2 years, like no other that we've had in the 10 years in this real estate career. So thank you again for the generosity and everybody here that, you know, shares that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being part of it, and look forward to getting out to Toronto, hopefully later on this year. I know toward the end of the month I'll be in Calgary and then Vancouver on the 1st. So on the western side of Canada, but make our ways that way.
My passenger locator form.
Yeah, so what I'd love to do is actually see if we can get you up here for a speaking engagement, much like Courtney's doing out in Alberta. So let's find a way to communicate about that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, send me a note on Workplace. We'll see what we can organize over time.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey, thank you for your question, Gary. Let's see, Angelique, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I believe Jacqueline basically asked the question that I wanted to ask, but I wanted to know what are we doing to take immediate action? Like in the 80s, you know, Home Depot came, then Lowe's came, you know, Burger King was there, then McDonald's came. I wanted to know if there's anything that we're doing immediate to stay ahead of the game, 2 steps, so we don't have any real competition out there, because, you know, there's so many brokerages. They're looking at the model. I know people in the beginning didn't believe that you could even possibly do this, and it's done. So now it's kind of like, let's get on board, but it's us against how many other brokerages, right, is really my question.
Yeah, and ironically, that's actually the reason why I think we'll win. Is if you think about it, EXP, we have 77,000 agents, and you think about, you know, any of the companies that are competing with us, they're, you know, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,500 agents. So it's very fragmented. There's probably 10 companies I know of that basically tried to copy the EXP model. And so there'll be this big fight for, I think we'll call it second place. And sort of like, you know, last week I went shopping on Amazon like 20 times, and I only use shop.com, which is a great way to buy other stuff maybe 2 times. And so, you know, I think about the idea that, you know, first movers advantage and continuing to innovate just helps us. I mean, we've got the best talent in the industry. We've got, and you think about what we did last year. So last year we brought, we did a deal with Grant Cardone. And so that was partially to shock and awe the industry. You know, you think about the idea that, you know, the #1 sales trainer, at least according to the internet, you know, he's now promoting EXP, and of course, Elena and the whole, you know, as building a large group, et cetera. So you've got this, you know, that sort of shock and awe this year, and we've all seen, you know, the preludes of it. You know, our goal is to bring Mark Willis on, who is, you know, the most beloved CEO in the history of Keller Williams. And he and I got along famously. He's super agent focused. That's what he lives for. And so I think about the idea of what are the different things that we can continue to do to shock and awe the industry, because if we can keep the industry talking about us, then they're not talking about our competition. And so a lot of this, Success Magazine was another purchase that I thought made total sense. Who else can own? Well, nobody can own it because only one company can own it, but we own the longest running personal development brand in the history of personal development. And we've got Jarek Robbins, the son of Tony Robbins, you know, president of that organization. So these are all little, we'll say they're all little chess moves that are all designed to make sure that we win. No one move is going to guarantee that we win, but each one of them in conjunction with each other, moves us down the field and sort of, we'll say, checkmates the industry. And so that's the way I think about it. Is there's no one way to win, but you make little moves every day that highlight some facet of the business. So whether we're upgrading the training side, the executive side, the technology side, and then the other thing we talked about this even last week in Cabo. I mentioned, we focused on net promoter scores being one of the things that we want to benchmark against. But what if we were to actually even benchmark higher, which means that our agents and brokers even have a better experience than they do now. I mean, it's the best overall value proposition in the industry. But if we listen, even better, we can even have better benefits.
Hey, Glenn, I'd like to add to that too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that's overlooked about the race for second place is that in order to even get remotely close to the growth trajectory that EXP has been on, there are so many logistical challenges of scaling a hyper growth company that a lot of these other brands have not yet gone through. And we are so far ahead when it comes to the actual size and scale of where we're at. I know that's a lot of things had to go right, and you had to have a lot of smart people in the room to get it to where it is today, just where it's at now.
Yeah, I mean, if they do go hyper growth, and so we're thinking about obviously much smaller companies, we've already went through the quote unquote show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and so we've really smoothed out a lot of stuff that companies that go into hyper growth. In 2016, 17, and 18, it was taking agents as much as a month to onboard, as much as 2 weeks to get paid on a transaction. I mean, literally everything was breaking. 2016, we grew by 240%. So it wasn't 100%, it wasn't 200%, it was 240%. And the stress and strains to the systems at that point were just incredible. And we're still having, at 77,000, there's still things we're solving before anybody else solves. Now, it makes it easier for them to copy us because we'll work through some of these issues. But the fact is we aren't slowing down while we're solving these challenges.
Well, thank you so much for your answer. And just lastly, do you think that maybe there's smaller brokerages, but do you think at any point in time that, let's say, 7 of the smaller brokerages decide, let's put this all together and make one big brokerage? Do you think that's a possibility? I can't see it, but Well,
I mean, it's a possibility, finite possibility. But I also know that quite often when you get these combinations, the infighting that takes place for upwards of 2 years, and there's actually science around it, bringing culturally aligning organizations that weren't together to begin with. I mean, Compass, look at all the brokerages they've acquired, and they're still fighting with each other. Even in San Francisco, they don't get along, even though they both have Compass on the door. They don't even believe they're the same company.
Looking safe to me.
Hey, awesome. Thank you for your question, Angelique. David Marsh, I think you're up next.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Ramon, for putting this on. Good morning, Glenn. Got a couple of questions. So if you could talk a little bit about the news that came out today with the bundle select, and then how's Showcase IDX coming along, and when are we going to have that?
So bundle select, I don't know a whole bunch of details on it, so I'm reading the press release just right along with you. But we got so many moving parts in this company, I can't keep track of them all. Showcase IDX is, they're building out our national portal. They're doing a number of things there. We're actually in the process of actually signing a new deal with Inside Real Estate KV Core. And so they've got a number of new pieces that they're adding to KV Core this year, one of which is I'm really excited about, which is called Core Home. And basically it means that anybody who's in your database, that they'll actually start to be able to manage their own home, and you'll be able to help them sort of with their closing docs, repairs, upgrades, other things. They're all sort of pre-market. So it actually creates a more of a life cycle with that consumer. So it's a pretty cool platform. And then there's another called Core, I think it's called Core Connect, and it'll actually be integrated with our closing platforms and closing companies, where the consumer and the agent can actually see a full pizza tracker during a purchase or sale. So it can say contract being negotiated, contract signed, inspection contingency, financing contingency, clear to close, and then close. And they'll literally have this pizza tracker, so the consumer can kind of track it all through the same platform that also then tracks their home, that also tracks their searches and everything else. So it's a pretty cool upgrade. We're going to be paying a lot for the upgrade. Agents won't see it as an expense, but we'll be paying for some upgrades to get all these services, because it will really create a much more loyal consumer for the agents that use KV Core.
Good stuff. Great question.
Thank you, David. How about Rob? I see your hand up there. Rob,
yeah, I got about 5 more minutes and I got to jump.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Glenn, for jumping on. So 2 things, just like, EXP, we like to have fun, but also build wealth as well. Can you give us any tidbits on EXPCon 2022 and also any tidbits on Success Lending and Glenn Stearns?
EXPCon is, I think we're actually going to be moving it. I don't think it's been announced yet, but we're moving it to the Mandalay Bay. I think it's going to be the first week of October. So just those are the couple tidbits, and we're extending it a day. So we're going from 3 days to 4 full days, I think, for EXPCon. So those are some updates there. Success Lending, we're licensed in 24 states. We've got over 100 deals in the pipeline. Most of those are actually coming with the loan officers that have joined us. We're just now pairing up agents and loan officers of Success Lending to start to the dialogue. Obviously, it's still the agent gets to make the choice as to who they recommend to their consumer, but we're bringing in some really top-notch loan officers that are high quality, and some of them are already working with our EXP agents and brokers. So it's a nice, easy transition, and of course that then lends itself to RevShare Plus. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, with RevShare Plus, RevShare is where we pay out 50% of the company dollar in the form of RevShare, calculated every month and adjusted dynamically. The plus is 50% of the net profits from affiliated services and complementary services will be actually added to the RevShare mix. So it's a really cool program because it gives us a way to incentivize the promotion of affiliated services, especially from those who are focused on the growth side of the company.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Don Newell, you there?
I think, yeah, and I think this was probably the last one here. We got time for one more.
Yeah, real quick. We were talking about acquisitions and other companies and things like that. Is there anything set in place that stops like a Warren Buffett or something coming to buy us?
Well, there is. He would have a hard time getting majority ownership of the company. Because the way we've got the company structured right now, about 51% of the company is owned by insiders, and so unless the insiders decided to sell, which I have no interest in selling, but unless insiders wanted to sell, there's no way he could get a majority ownership. So you think about 51% is insiders, then there's probably another 20% or more that's actually owned by our agents and brokers. So that's 70% of the company. So it really prevents any sort of hostile takeover by someone. Now, I'll sort of think about another way. Is there may be strategic partners that, if they came and knocking, would we listen? And I'll give you an example. I don't know if this would happen, and we'd have to negotiate what it would look like post acquisition. But just imagine if Amazon owned EXP, sort of like game over. So you think about the idea that we keep a rev share equity, and Amazon ended up being some sort of owner, and then we get all the advertising that Amazon provides. So there's certain things that maybe make sense, but to be owned by a conglomerate that is just going to create a whole bunch of other competing interests and try to just carve us up, wouldn't have an interest. But I think there's certain companies that there could be a lot of synergy, but it's not something I'm really interested in. I don't think it's a real possibility anyway.
It's a great question there. Glenn, I know you have a hard stop, but I know you need to get going. But guys, the one thing I will say, these are all great questions, but I have to encourage you, go to the events, show up to the different things that EXP is doing around the country, read the press releases, get involved in EXP World, take the courses, get in workplace, get as involved as you possibly can, because like Glenn said, there's so many moving parts, but when you start learning how the company operates, this opportunity it's truly once in a lifetime. So Glenn, thank you for jumping on. We appreciate all the insight, and it was great hanging out with you this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Ramon. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. Thank you.
you.
We'll see you.
Hey.